Okay, councillors, let's make a start. Evening all. I'm Councillor Paul Wilby, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instruction on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be broadcast by the council, but if anyone else intends to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? Okay. I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by the way of the microphones and remind them to turn their microphones off when they're finished speaking. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 1. Apologies for absence. Thank you. Okay. Are there any substitute members? Thank you. Okay. Are there any visiting members? Could you please come forward and declare what item you wish to speak on, Rob?
Item 15, please, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, moving on then to item 4. I look to the officer to withdraw the item 16 application 24/505135 TPRA from the agenda, and we will have a brief explanation as to why. Yeah.
This is due to the fact that the decision has actually been made. I believe it was on the 3rd of March. So the decision is not in front of councillors tonight.
Is that the only item withdrawn?
It's the only item withdrawn.
Thank you. Move on to item 6. Urgent items. I intend to take the written and verbal updates and appendices attached to the amended agenda as an urgent item, as they contain further information relating to matters to be considered at the meeting tonight. Agreed? Councillors? Item 7, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? Okay, Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair. Item, where are we? 19, I think it's the chimney at Vinces Park. Whilst in the cabinet, it has not come through the cabinet at all, and the first I learned about it was on receipt of the papers. As everything is in my portfolio, technically, I think I probably ought to just step out and not be part of that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Item 18, I'm proposing I recuse myself, the applicants known to me on friendship. And items 16 and 19, similar to Councillor Jeffrey, while their cabinet proposed, I've not had any access to any information for those apart from the papers that are in front of us today. So I'm happy to stay if you are happy with that.
I think that's the same for all the cabinet members with to do the TVO and the chimneys. Yeah, I'm quite happy for you all to stay. So if you've had no involvement apart from Councillor Jeffries. Yeah. Okay.
Same. Item 19.
Okay. Item 8, disclosures of lobbying. As always, I'll start from the left. Start with Councillor Cleater.
The 2 items regarding the Meadows, Lenham Road, Headcorn, Plot 1 and Plot 3.
So, Councillor Cleater, could you just repeat that? I don't think we got that.
Items 1 and 2 on the running order.
Okay, Councillor Wilkinson.
I'm items 21 and 22 on the agenda as well, Chair.
Items 14, 21, 22.
No items at all, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing for me.
1, 2 and 8.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 15 on the agenda and items 21 and 22. Okay.
I was not a member of the relevant committee at Boxley Parish Council, so I have nothing to declare with regard to item 15. I'm open-minded on the subject and intend to take part in the debate and vote. We've dealt with 16 and 19 already. I had no part to play in those. I have been lobbied with regard to items 18, 21 and 22. Thank you.
I'm miles behind on my email, so I may have been lobbied on other ones, but I'm vaguely aware of being lobbied on number 18.
Items 21, 22 on the agenda. Thank you.
Items 13, 18, 21 and 22.
And that's the same for me. Okay, moving on. Item 10. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of February 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Oh, yeah. Oh, hang on, Councillor Spooner.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. I may have missed item 7 when you went through. I need to disclose I'm a member of Bearsted Parish Council, but I'm not a member of its planning committee, and I took no part in its consideration of item number 23 on the agenda. Sorry, I didn't pick that up earlier.
That's okay, Councillor Spooner. No problem. Okay, moving on then. Done? Yes. Moving on to the adjourned meeting. Oh, sorry. I've actually jumped there. So I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of February 2025 be the correct as recorded and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay. There are no petitions to my knowledge. Okay. I call upon Rob Jarman to go over the deferred items.
I have no update, councillors, sorry.
Okay, moving on then. Item 21, I call upon Will Fletcher to introduce the report.
Thank you. So the application tonight is at the Meadows Gypsy and Travellers site in Lenham Road, Headcorn. The site is at the southern end of the northern portion of the site. The application, which is retrospective, seeks to change the use of land for the siting of 2 static caravans, 2 tourers, and the erection of 2 day rooms. The application was deferred at the January Planning Committee, principally on the basis that additional information be provided on condition 12, which relates to foul surface water drainage. The site's existing septic tank is located at the north-west site boundary between the day room and Unit 1. The applicant has indicated that the tank is emptied twice a year. The deferred report provides further details relating to the appeal decision and some of the other matters raised in that meeting. So as we'll discuss tonight, the site has an extensive appeals history. Some sites were allowed as part of a wider ranging inquiry. Some sites were allowed, some sites were dismissed. So we have the site at the northwest, which is plot 6. The inspector assessed as this causing a moderate level of harm. Then the remaining sites were assessed as causing significant harm. But the sites that were assessed as causing significant harm, the appellants who were at this meeting to present their personal circumstances had their appeals allowed. The appellants who did not attend had their appeals dismissed. So just to return to the report, the site drainage conditions that were requested in the deferred committee, that's covered by conditions 8 and 12. And in contrast to planning conditions used for proposed development, where development is retrospective, a site development scheme type planning condition is commonly used. As normal condition triggers are not available in this circumstance, the site development scheme condition is drafted to require information from the applicant and action in a specified time period. The applicant is incentivized to provide the requested information, as the condition wording means in the absence of this information, ultimately the whole planning permission falls away and is void. So on the basis of the additional details which are detailed in the deferred officer report and the details in the original committee report, where the visual impact is assessed, as well as the appeal decision and the shortfall of sites is detailed, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions.
Okay, thank you, Will. I believe we have Councillor Diamond here from Oldcombe Parish Council. No? Okay.
She doesn't seem to be here. Is it okay if I read out her case?
As a ward member, yeah.
Okay. This is from Parish Council. Oldcombe Parish Council urges the Planning Committee to carefully review the recommendation of NBC planners to approve this G&T application. The 15 years ongoing enforcement activities for land known as the Rear of the Meadows G&T site situation, where this plot is located, has cost NBC and taxpayers a fortune. Yet after all this time and money, NBC planners want to go against an inspector's decision and their own enforcement actions and approve this site. Do NBC planners really know better than the inspector? The inquiry was a long, comprehensive process that considered the health, welfare, social networks of G&Ts and provided many opportunities for evidence to be presented and witnesses to state their case. There was also an appeal process which neither the G&Ts or NBC took up. What is the point of the whole planning process if decisions made by the inspectorate, which are made on behalf of the Secretary of State, are ignored? Do NBC planners really know better than the planning inspector? Indeed, this is extraordinary. It's a rare and worrying precedent. When NBC originally issued its eviction notice, the applicants appealed to the planning inspector. Plot 3, Unit 1, located on the land known as the Rear of the Meadows, is one of the plots not permitted by the planning inspector in March 2023 when the appeal decision was made. The planning inspector reviewed 10 plots and 6 of these were approved. The others were not approved. The inspector dictated the unpermitted plots should be removed and reverted to green fields within 12 months, i.e. March 2024. This has yet to happen and we want to know when NBC will enforce this decision. Note the inspector's landscaping conditions for the permitted sites have not been implemented 2 years after the inquiry. Again, we want to know when NBC will enforce these conditions. Agreeing this application will result in uncertainty and distrust amongst everyone. It will send a message that NBC planning do not mean what they say when they issue enforcement notices. For some travellers, it will send a strong message that they can create pitches wherever they want. And in fact, that's happened on NBC land towards the end of last week in the Lenham Road. She then goes on, how many of you have actually visited the Meadows site? They have, I have, and a number of other people I know have. The sites along the traveller sites along the Lenham Road are huge and they're growing. Okay, I think that's enough from Alana because she wouldn't have got that into 3 minutes anyway. But
Councillor, just on some of those points, I'm just going to bring Robin to actually just address a few of those issues before we go to the overall debate.
Yeah, in many respects, this is a straightforward application in that, as Councillor Trubinsky pointed out, this site was dismissed at a public inquiry, a recent public inquiry, so that's a strong material consideration. However, as I understand it, the reason why no enforcement action has been taken and the application has been invited is because of the personal circumstances of the traveller family. So it's a matter of weighing up a very recent appeal decision, and the appeal was dismissed on landscape impact, and obviously the landscape impact hasn't changed. That has to be balanced up against the personal circumstances of the family involved. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Trubinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, could we turn to page 124 of the agenda? Yeah, the main. This is a list of appeal decisions. Right, we get this every month. How many times have we gone against these appeal decisions ourselves? Maybe we could have that answered as a question in a minute. And the answer, I think, will be very, very few, if any. So why is there to be an exception on this case? And I want to also go to page 92, item 04. It says, as stated above, this part of the appeal site was dismissed on landscape grounds. However, both myself and the enforcement team consider that the inspector dismissed accommodation on the current application site as there was no evidence on need of or personal circumstances given to the appeal inquiry. Well, I'm sorry, but they should have done it at the appeal if that's what they were going to do. And I don't see how our enforcement team and our planning officer can consider something different to what the inspectors actually decided. Now, just carrying on, we've done the detail there on the appeal and other things. I would like to add that the Lenham Road is now becoming almost a ghetto. We had last week illegal activities which on NBC land itself, which I understand is being dealt with, or I haven't heard what's happened this week. And it's not good for the settled community, and indeed it's not good for the travelling community either. I would like to know again what's happened to the DPD, because I haven't heard what's happened, and it seems to have stalled somewhat. And well, I haven't heard anything, that's all I'm saying. If you would like to clear that up, Stuart, that'd be fine. But it really is unacceptable. We have again put in this situation where we come and have to discuss all this on this type of planning application. And I feel very strongly about this. I think that's all I've got for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Lemmiga. I can reassure Councillor Trubinski that just last week the consultation responses were published, and essentially the DPD went out to public consultation. Those consultations are being worked through, and some changes being made to the document to accommodate the responses that came from both statutory consultees and from residents. So the document is continuing as the plan, and as it's a development plan document, so it will be very, very strong. And it will contain what you've always wanted, which is the public site allocations, so that we'll stop losing every appeal we fight. And I think that brings us back to the challenge tonight is, you know, our land supply in terms of gypsy and traveller sites is clearly deficient. Again, as the ward councillor knows, I do know this site and I have been out there, and I do know that this application site is very tight in terms of the accommodation that's on it. And that was something that concerned me with the DPD as was originally written, because it was talking about essentially concentration into existing sites. And that's effectively what's happened here, is additional families being moved into quite a constrained site. And we've already, at the end of the meadows, there's already two very tight sites, and this is another very tight site through a subdivision which has occurred. However, there are family associations, so that is probably why it works. But I'm not sure that this is the way forward. we don't want to just keep cramming families in to the same area just because our numbers are down. We really do need to think about quality of life of the Gypsy and Traveller community. I think on this one, it's very difficult to find any policy grounds to object. But as I say, I'm not that keen on the subdivision element. But what I would say is that if delivered, the landscaping conditions attached to this, and I thank William for the work he's done, because it does seem to have worked its way through that we do want to deliver this. I think we need to place an informative on that the landscape team at Maidstone work with the applicant to explain exactly where and how the scheme goes in, because as the parish council have raised, there was a comprehensive landscape package which was approved by the inspector 2 years ago, and that has not materialised. Nothing to do with this family here and on this site. I think they are willing to go ahead with it, and I think we work with them and to do that. It's also worth saying that the challenge we faced in the last few days on the NBC owned site is not associated again with this family here, so we can't have any kind of link that's there. So I think until we got the DPD in place and we can ensure greater quantity and quality, I think we have no choice but to permit this application, but we do need to ensure the conditions are enforced. That is the bottom line. You know, it will work with the conditions, it won't work without them. So with that informative, so particularly on the landscaping that we work with the family, I'm prepared to move that we do grant permission. Thank you, as per the papers, but with the informative on landscape.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. Do I have a seconder? I'm quite happy to second from the chair, but Councillor Summersgill, you wanted to.
Can I just clarify, this is a retrospective application. Was the family and the buildings on the site there at the time of the appeal, or had they arrived afterwards?
Can't confirm that detail, but we'd have to assess the application, which is in front of us right now, with the plans that are submitted.
Any other questions? Anyone? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hear what you say, Councillor Harwood, but I'm afraid, although there may be no direct connection between what happened last week and what we're looking at here, we have failed time and time again to draw a line under what we can accept. And Maidstone Borough Council now is seen as an easy place to come. And I, for one, don't like that. I think we should have proper planning applications go in before people put things in. We should have, if they want to buy a bit of land, no problem at all, but the planning application should be going. We have had far too many retrospectives, and we've got far too many plots that are still not grassed when the appeal said they should be. If you go down to see them, you will see these horrible pitch, tarmac things there, and a lot of other stuff you'll see. And one of the other things I hadn't mentioned was, again, the wastewater issue. There is, I've driven down the Lenham Road at 10 o'clock at night across a hose pipe that's gone from that site across the road into the ditch. And sorry, one other thing that I did want to mention also was that I am very, should we say, disturbed when I hear that a parish council, this is not referring to Oldham, a parish council will only send in written documents to this committee because they feel it's a waste of time for them coming here to be here themselves, because time and time again they feel they are not listened to. And I'd just like to make that final point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think most members on here who have been on here for a while sympathise with that, and obviously over the decades that Tony's probably been here, there's been a fair few that obviously we'd rather not have approved, but with policy, which is the issue that guides us, and national policy, we have to abide by that. So unfortunately, this does meet the policy, and you know, it's an unfortunate situation, but hopefully the DPD will actually address some of those situations going forward. And when it comes in, we'll be in a stronger position to actually fight against applications. Okay. Anyone else want to discuss? Councillor Jeffries.
I'll say a few words. I must say I'm listened with sitting on 50-50 on this one, given the recent appeal failing, and that feels like quite a large material aspect to me. I'm minded to vote against it on that basis. I understand the new information about the family link. I'm also very supportive of the DPD in terms of trying to make sure that we're not cramming sites. And clearly that DPT, as I understand it, if it's the same as a local plan, will gain weight as it goes through the process. And Rob's just nodded, thank you. So I think, you know, it's been appealed unsuccessfully recently. I think we should try and turn it down, frankly.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Jeffries. Here's the emotional side of that. I hear no policy against why to turn it down to go with it. So again, if you're going to move that, then I need some reasons why, and I need a second to go with it.
I can't move that because you and Tony
Yeah,
moved another one.
no.
But I'll think about that and I'll ask for advice when we get there.
Okay. Yeah, you can, Councillor Jeffries, you can move an amendment. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Dravinsky.
Sorry, very quickly, Mr. Chair. Is it possible that the parish councillor from Oldcombe can now speak? Unfortunately, he was a bit late. I don't know if that's possible. Okay.
I've just advised, unfortunately, because you've read the statement out. Yeah. So,
I'm not sure if it's the same statement. This is what she sent to us separately.
okay. Oh, yes, come forward and do the statement.
This application affects both the parishes of Oldcombe and Headcorn, and Headcorn has already submitted their objection. Accepting this application makes a mockery of the whole planning process. What's the point? After 15 years ongoing enforcement activities for the land known as the rear of the meadows, where this plot is located, it's cost MBC and taxpayers a fortune. Yet after all this time and money, planners want to go against an inspector's decision, and indeed their own enforcement actions to approve this site. Do MBC planners really know better than the inspector who makes decisions on behalf of the Secretary of State? The inquiry was a long, comprehensive...
Sorry, I'm just going to sound in very similar word for what what's been read out already.
Well, it's not word for word. Sorry, it's a bit loud. It's not word for word, but obviously it's...
Okay, seeing that Councillor Travinsky read out half of it, do you want to read out the second half of it so you don't go over?
It's like a pantomime, isn't it? Okay. Agreeing this application sends the message that the travellers community can do what they want. Indeed, this year we've seen 2 large and lawful sites set up on the Lennon Road. Indeed, the traveller latest land grab is MBC owned land. Who here has actually visited the plot? If you drive down the Lennon Road, you'll see the situation is out of control. Our precious ecology, beautiful countryside, willfully and systematically destroyed, and what for? Huge, unkempt, unregulated sites, many with illegal foul wastewater disposal, miles of concrete with not a blade of grass or tree in sight, soulless, depressing. NBC should be ashamed of their informal policy of creating traveller ghettos along the Lenham Road. This would not be allowed for the settled community. The Meadows is a place where people can't thrive, not a place for the old, the very sick or vulnerable. It doesn't encourage integration between travellers and the settled community. It does not provide opportunities for travellers to improve their socio-economic status, and it is against your own and national traveller planning guidelines. On the 20th of February, the committee refused 2 additional plots at Plumtree Park. The committee said it was important to abide by an inspector's decision. It was important not to agree sites just to meet targets. It was important to take into account quality of life. Well, I can tell you, Plumtree Park is a paradise compared to the Meadows, and it does not generate anywhere near the same level of crime, antisocial behaviour. It does not generate considerable amount of stress and fear for the settled community. There is no point issuing conditions, as we all know they won't happen. The inspector's landscaping conditions 2 years down the line have not been implemented, and they have not been enforced by this council. Finally, this application isn't even about traveller need, it's about profit. The applicant, Mr. Ali, is a businessman who has submitted numerous applications. Some of these are for traveller sites. Only this year, the Charles Sutton site was approved, and also a farmhouse down Lenham Road was approved. Do the right thing and refuse this application. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I do need to come back on this because we're a regulatory committee which has very strict rules about the way that we work. And we know the way that we make decisions on appeals. Later on this agenda, we've got a couple of cases where there were appeal decisions against an application, but the application that we have before us is slightly different and therefore either evades or satisfies the requirements of the inspector's decision. I think we're getting really cross purposes in this as to why the decision was made in the strategic appeal for the whole site 2 years ago as to what has happened here. And also we're conflating a whole lot of ills for one young family who are in this tiny sliver of the site. And as I said, in an ideal world, it would be a better located, better laid out site. But the problem is we don't have any. And with respect, I'm having colleagues talk about the fact that where is the policy? Well, we have been in administration for less than a year. We now have a public sites policy going through for the first time. We now have a development plan document that's been out to a Reg 18 consultation. As we're going through the consultation responses, we've moved very, very quickly to tackle all of the issues that I know need to be resolved. Frankly, because from sitting on this committee for the last 38 years or whatever, I know exactly what the issues are. So we are where we are, and I would appreciate it if officers did come back just to explain the appeal conundrum that we're in here, because we cannot use as a grounds the wrong policy, because that is what it looks like we could do at the moment.
Okay, I'm just gonna bring Rob back in and then I'll move to the vote.
Okay, so as Councillor Harwood alluded to, the appeal which went to public inquiry, I think it was 2 years ago, part of the site was dismissed. So the council won, if you like, and this was part of that site, sites, plural, sorry. And the parts dismissed of the entire site were dismissed because of landscape harm. So that's a very material consideration, a recent inspector's decision, and it's even more material because it was decided at public inquiry. However, balanced against that, as I understand it, and obviously the Gypsy and Traveller family that is on the plot now were not represented at the public inquiry. So I'm not making a big deal about representation, but personal circumstances were not in front of the inspector, as a matter of fact. But they are before you tonight, simply because there is now a family living on site. The landscape harm is still a very important consideration. So it's balancing, which wasn't in front of the inspector, it's balancing the material weight that councillors want to give to the personal circumstances of the Gypsy and Traveller family, balanced against the acknowledged landscape harm as identified by a government inspector.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. Okay, I think that kind of summed it up quite a nice little bundle for us. Okay, so I'm going to move to the vote. We've got proposer and seconder with the informative for the planning team to work with the applicant on the landscaping. Okay, so all those in favour? All those against? Those abstaining? Okay, so I now need some reasons, policy reasons. Yes, so someone needs to move something to actually.
Chairman, with respect, we're not qualified planners. We can have a recess and the planners can give us reasons. They feel the will of the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Russell, you have to give them some guidance. You can't just say. They've advised us to propose to approve this. You need to give them some guidance on what you are refusing it on. Mr. Jeffries.
Can I suggest the harm to the landscape, which is what the inspector identified?
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Trubinsky, thank you. Okay. I'm not going to go through a big debate again because I think we're just going to go around in a circle. But go on, Councillor Harwood.
I come back to the point that when landscaping was discussed, it was strategically for the whole site that projects out into an open rural landscape. This site is a subdivision of an existing plot with a close board fence running down the middle. I fail to see that you can see from the landscape any different. Well, there isn't any difference because from the landscape, you cannot see the close boarded fence running down the middle of the plot. So I fail to see how we could use a ground which you cannot see for landscaping. And in terms of this particular site, a landscaping scheme has been submitted, which the officers are happy with, which washes the face of this particular subdivision of the existing plot. So, yeah, I don't want to kind of prolong this. However, it does not make any sense to me, and I really do want more than a strategic landscaping for an entire site somehow applies to a close boarded fence down the middle of a tiny internal plot. It's got to make more sense than that. We're going to lose the appeal anyway because we haven't got the 5-year land supply. However, we need to at least have just some evidential underpinning as to what we can do to make it better. I think that's my concern, coming from a policy perspective of not wanting to lose appeals and have costs and all the issues we're getting.
Councillor Harwood, Councillor Cleater. Okay, Councillor Trubinsky.
There are ongoing issues with the disposal of foul wastewater. That's another reason we should be putting in there, and it's a big effect on the amenity of the immediate neighbours.
So just to summarise that, so one of the conditions would, or one of the reasons for refusal would be concerns over the foul treatment going into the, I think there's a ditch down the back, isn't there? So that's one of your concerns, Councillor Czerwinski. Okay. To be honest with honest, I don't believe we do, but we have. I agree with your frustration. However, we have a proposer, we have a seconder. I think we could. This is one of those items we could discuss constantly tonight, and I'll bring you back in. But yeah, obviously we've got the second one after this to go with it. However, I am going to do like a bit of the thing. We are a policy committee, and again, we seem to be going away from policy. You know, and Councillor Harwood is right. We will probably lose this at appeal. But Councillor Harwood.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back on, you know, if you put conditions on, you put conditions that you know you can evidence and you know you can win an argument on. It is a different part of the site where the pipe that goes into the ditch is. This site has clearly got a septic tank within the compound, and there is no ditch network linking it to the front of the site where the problem is. So therefore, I don't think because there is elsewhere on the site, yes, there absolutely is a problem on the front of the site, but this application site, we cannot prove it because we've got what we got, a septic tank, which isn't connected to any pipes.
Okay, Councillor Harwood, and just talking to the officer, he agrees that the foul drainage isn't an issue for this site. For the overall site, yes, but it's not something we can actually put in there. Councillor Brzezinski, you had some more to add.
Well, I think we've given enough reasons, but we've had a vote. And I think that concludes the matter. Thank you.
We haven't had a vote yet. We need to. Councillor Jeffries has proposed, you've seconded, and now we need to go to the vote. I will just, Councillor, sorry, Mr. Jarman just wants to come in quickly.
Sorry. I'd be grateful if we could have a 5-minute adjournment to actually pinpoint that part of the inspector's decision that refers to this specific part of the dismissed appeal.
Can I ask that you also look at the item after it? It's,
yeah,
it's
yes.
Okay. So, is that an agreement? Okay, we have a 5-minute adjournment. Okay, councillors, if you can take your seats, please. Okay, councillors, I'm just going to bring Mr. Jarman back in. He's gone through and has come up with some wording.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just to contextualise this and going back to one of Councillor Harwood's specific points. No, the inspector didn't isolate this part of the site in, is it her decision? But in fairness, that wasn't in front of her. So to cut to the chase, the sites that were dismissed, which includes this application in front of you, was dismissed as a grouping. Yeah. So hopefully that addresses Councillor Harwood's point. And the reason given for dismissing all of the grouping was, to quote from paragraph 178 of the planning inspector's conclusions, was that the development has a poor site layout. I think that has been mentioned this evening. The development has a poor site layout and has resulted in a significant and harmful change in landscape character. And I think that should be the foundation of our reason for refusal. And we embellish it by referring to the appropriate local plan review policies.
Are you happy to leave that word in to the officers to come up with? Yeah. The delegated powers, okay? Councillor Summergill.
Can I just check it? This is EN2 in the system, EN2, because I'm just cross-checking the maps and that appears to be the same site. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move to the vote. So we're voting for refusal on the grounds established and giving delegated powers to the officers for the wording. Okay. All those in favour? All those against? Those abstaining? Okay, that is refused. Okay, moving on then to item 22. I move to the officer to introduce the report.
Thank you. So this is also at the Meadows site. This is again at the southern portion. So this site is part of that EN2 group, which was dismissed, as Rob was just detailing. This site is immediately south of the approved sites. So again, it's a retrospective application, 2 static caravans, a day room and 2 tourers. Again, I won't go through the appeal history again. So again, inspectors assessed significant landscape harm, but at that, the allowed sites were based on the applicant's personal circumstances. Gypsy and Traveller planning applications are a unique area of the planning system because they are the only applications where an applicant's personal circumstances are taken into consideration. So, for example, a site can go through the whole appeal process. It can then be sold onto another applicant, and then they can come forward with their proposal, and they'll have an entirely new set of personal circumstances, which we have to take into account. So, as is based on the officer report, we have the applicant's personal circumstances in this situation. Again, the appeal decision is a very significant material consideration based on the applicant's personal circumstances. They are settled base. There's health needs on site, local GPs, and it's beneficial for them to be on site. So we've assessed that outweighs the harm caused. At the time of the appeals, it was debated, but the inspector did agree or accept that our site supplier was in accordance with the local plan. So we had the 5-year supply, now we don't. So we've got a significant shortfall of sites. So the significant shortfall of sites needs of the applicant outweigh the, or we've assessed that outweighs the landscape harm caused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Will. Councillor Diamond, do you wish to speak again on this application? Okay, thank you, councillor. Okay, so I then move to the ward member.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's the same circumstances, and I think we need to be consistent. So I think I'd move that we go straight to a vote on this for the same reasons.
Councillor, you actually have to move, so you have to propose it refusal on the same grounds as the previous application. Yeah.
I propose that we will go to the vote on the same grounds as the previous one.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jeffrey, thank you. Councillor Harwood has indicated to speak, so Councillor Harwood.
And again, for consistency, because I think this is total misreading of planning on this application, and we will inevitably lose the appeal and will cause a lot of disruption to the families involved. I will move an amendment that we in fact grant permission with the informative on the landscaping delivery of working with our officers to make sure it's delivered to the letter. Thank you.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Okay.
Point of order. Is an amendment allowed to negate the substantive motion that's already been proposed and seconded?
Yes.
Completely reverse it.
So it's an amendment on that. That's exactly the same as what we could have done beforehand before we get to the vote. So that is the correct procedure. So we will vote on the amendment first of all, and then come back to the motion. Thank you. Okay. Those all in favour of Councillor Harwood's approval? Those against? Okay, and those abstaining? Okay, that has failed. We now move to the main vote. Okay, those in favour of refusal on the same grounds as the previous application? Those against? Those abstaining? Okay, that is refused. Okay, moving on then. I call upon Kate, the Senior Plan Officer, to introduce the report.
Right, sorry, thank you, Chairman. I trust you've all seen the published urgent update for this application. May I also just add that to recommended reason for refusal 2, that there should be an amendment so that after it says cause significant harm to the character and appearance of the countryside hereabouts, please add that falls within the low-willed landscape of local value. So just to go through the site, this is the site in the background here. As you can see, there's quite a sense of open space, which is an important characteristic of the area at this point of Headcorn Road. This is the site with the glen here, looking towards the rear with the dilapidated shed. This is the front. And again, this is the front hedge that's largely to be removed for the new vehicle access. This is the proposed layout and the elevations. So moving on, and as set out within the report, the occupants of the new dwelling would be reliant on the use of the private motor vehicle for their day-to-day living. The application is contrary to the local plan review in that there is no policy support for such a development, and the scheme would result in a significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. In planning terms, it is also essential that the presence or otherwise of protected species and the extent that they may be affected by development is established before permission is granted. Without the required great crested newt, reptile and hazel dormouse information, the application has failed to demonstrate that protected species would not be adversely impacted upon as a result of the development. Furthermore, the application does not include details of the required visibility displays for the new access and has therefore failed to demonstrate that the development would be acceptable in highway safety terms. In conclusion, the planning system is plan-led and there are no material benefits or considerations that would outweigh the harm identified within the committee report. As such, it would not be reasonable to depart from the development plan on this occasion, and on this basis, a recommendation of refusal is made.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Councillor Eastwood for Broughton, Marlborough Parish Council.
All right. Hello, thank you. The mechanism to bring out of plan applications to this committee must surely be to avoid absurdities by rigorous adherence to the plan. I submit that it would be such an absurdity to close the door on development on this site for reasons that will be invalidated when the last 10 years of the plan are reached in just 3 years, especially when it is welcomed by immediate neighbours. We do acknowledge the reasons on the display and the biodiversity and acknowledge that those probably can't be overcome. But the precedent, as you've discussed in the last two items, is important. If we turn to the plan, particularly SP8, the location is within the envelope of houses which consider themselves to be within Grafty Green, which is part of a linear settlement, principally following the Headcorn Road. Being just one dwelling, it is of small scale compared to the immediate surrounding cluster. The addition will not blur any distinction between housing clusters, which is important to the local plan. It will keep Grafty Green separate from the adjoining Headcorn. Whilst the design may be considered urban, the street scene is already dominated by Broughton Park, a significant development of urban appearance. The rural character and appearance of the area would therefore not be reduced to any material extent. Rather, the proposed would act as a linkage between the urban and rural components of the housing cluster, which is already an eclectic mix of styles where uniformity would be out of place. Broughton Park was not solely approved in 2016, as indicated in the report. It was expanded in 2019 by 2 homes being converted from smaller office units. Grafty has already lost its shop and a pub. Remaining services, the pub's village halls and bus services, are facing challenging times, and some small-scale development is welcomed. The local plan allows for other parish endorsements other than neighbourhood plans, with no mention of the formalities that the report seems to require. Given the nice things that the Charter of Maidstone Borough Council says about parish councils, it seems contradictory to dismiss parish council support for this application. Simultaneously, and the report praises the entrance to Broughton Park as being an open space, but I note that also the open space will be preserved by the largely hard surfacing that is in front of it. And whilst it is acknowledged that the sustainability is a problem, I think this underestimates the degree to which a lot of houses in Grafty Green are occupied by people working from home, and that does reduce the traffic impact. So I commend the dropping of the reasons of the plan from this refusal. I acknowledge that probably the diversity and the displays will cause it to be refused, but please restrict your reasons just to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've also got Mr. Thompson for the applicant.
Iron the Glen. This is the house next door. It's my hedge. I've spoken to Mr. McMunn when he started his, when he started his development. How's this go on? There you go. Okay. Masters have been working, sorry about that. So yes, early on when he decided to take on the development, he spoke to me about the dwelling he was putting down. He considered a two-story house, noting that the Glen and the property next door are both bungalows. I spoke to him very politely and he agreed straight away without any change to put in a bungalow. So if you look at the land next to it, it has been cut down, and that land, that jungle, is overburdening my land itself. And yes, I agree with the council and what we need to do, but I think it fits in nicely his development where it is at the moment, where he's planning to do. And I honestly think, as the closest neighbour, it should be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so a bit ad hoc that. So.
That's okay. Okay. You're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at this application, the site, has anyone been to see the site? So, apart from me? So, yeah, there's a surprise. There's a surprise. It's a site that is nestling in between the Glen, which is on one side of it. On the other side of it is a road that leads into Bourton Park, which is a fairly extensive development of very large houses. This particular plot of land is an oblong shape, a rectangular shape, and it really serves no use other than maybe, not definitely, a habitat for some species that may be protected, but I doubt it very much. If you go and look at it, it's not. It's just overgrown, and there's nothing there. Particularly because it does nestle between a road, this other development, and bungalow. But I think also, if we look at it says in the proposal, it would result in significant harm to the rural character and appearance of the countryside hereabouts. Well, I think that's a matter of opinion, and actually, in my opinion, it wouldn't. It would actually enhance the area. It says also on there that there would be quite a lot of the hedgerow disappearing. No, it would be enough for a car to get in. And the rest of the hedgerow would stay, and probably you'd find that that the new owners would want to improve things and plant another hedgerow. I don't know, around the back and whatever. Like many parishes, smaller parishes, there isn't a local plan, and as Councillor Eastwood pointed out, he is endorsed. The parish council, the local parish council, is endorsing this. This is something that everyone locally would like to see happen. And I think it's, again, time that we listen to the parish councils a bit more than we have done maybe in the past. There's a hotel and pub within walking distance, within easy walking distance actually. And the buses do go there once a week. But I think looking at the whole issue, it would not be any impact on the area. That piece of land will get used one way or another, and I much prefer it to be used in this way than any other way that might crop up. So I would propose that we accept this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. To my mind, the most important thing that town and country planning does is protect the countryside. We have slightly weakened, but we do have policies to protect the character of the countryside. And anyone who knows this stretch of Lenham Road will know it's big, tall hedges fronting onto the lane. Yes, there was a redevelopment nearby, but it was a greenhouses on a garden centre. It was a regeneration site, and those of us who were there when that scheme was permitted will remember the work we did to ensure that the landscape buffers at the junction and the hedgerows were protected and that it was appropriately screened. And I think that screening is beginning to work. I do not believe we can, as a regulatory committee, drive a coach and horses through our planning policies, because it's a very slippery slope, and there are all sorts of issues have been raised around local support and parish council support. That I'm sorry, but that's not what we respond to. We respond to the development plan, and this is contrary on so many levels that it would be, we just could not justify reasons to do it. So therefore, I don't think anything has been seconded yet. So I will move that we refuse as per the papers.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, I don't think actually you proposed anything, Councillor, but Mr. Jarman just wants to come back to clarify a few items.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what's just been said, but one of the sort of foundation stones of decision making is obviously consistency. I think we had quite a challenging debate on 2 changes of use applications on an established site. And I think if I can mention Councillor Jeffries, I think he said 50-50, and I think that's quite a good summation of it. But that was on an established site. And the reason given for a change of use, not bricks and mortar, was landscape harm. But now, clearly, you'd be able to see the proposed dwelling. There's no village envelope, yet this is acceptable. I just don't get the consistency. And I don't know what the policy basis is. I don't think one can say it's going to bring back a bus service, one house. So I have major issues in terms of significant impact on the countryside. I think it's in an unsustainable location. Many sites in the countryside are, contain overgrown hedges. To me, that's one of the charms of the countryside. It's not all about pretty postcard countryside. It's this undeveloped nature. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. You did second, Councillor Jeffrey. So do you want to speak, or do you want to reserve your right?
Just for clarity, I seconded Councillor Harwood's motion.
So are you reserving your right to speak? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Summersgill.
Yes, I'd like to have some more clarification on how this is significant harm to the character and appearance of the countryside. And I understand what you've just said, but there is properties on the other side of the road. There's properties on both sides of this house, and as I see now, 24 other buildings close by. I just don't see the significant use there. I can see harm. I can't see significant in my view.
That's quite concerning. So, as I've worked in planning for a long time, many moons ago, not in the NPPF, but there used to be something called infilling. And that was a narrow gap capable of taking 1 or 2 houses in a substantially built up frontage. So classically, and I've dealt with appeals on this, if you had a terrace, there's one in Langley actually on the left-hand side, so you're coming out to Maidstone, that was classed as an infill development. So you got terraced houses, break terraced houses. But here you've got big gaps between the houses. And to my mind, those gaps are important because there's many gaps in the countryside, particularly in an area like Maidstone. So for that reason, and the fact that it's on the road, it's highly visible, we are saying, amongst other things, that significant harm is being caused to the character and appearance of the countryside. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. But before bringing Councillor Trubinsky, I was going to say that I agree with yourself, Councillor Harwood, on this. And this is a link. We keep saying about we want to be green and we want to actually keep all our nature corridors. This forms a nature corridor. As much as possibly if the other development hadn't happened around it, it would be more acceptable in one case. But it has happened, and this is a piece of land that forms a nature highway through to the back of those fields from the roads from the other side. And obviously there are the issues again with the actual vehicle access, which have been raised as well. So yeah, I'll bring Councillor Trubinsky in, and then if no one else is indicating to talk, we go to the vote.
Thank you. I do agree with Councillor Sunskill, actually. If you go to the site and you look at it from the other side of the road, there will not be any significant damage to the countryside. There will be, yes, admittedly, a small entrance for a car's width as part of the hedgerow. And probably the hedgerow will cover most of the house anyway, if you're worried about it, because it's quite high, and I don't suppose people keep, well, it's not going to be cut down. And I think that it would actually improve that area, because at the moment it's a very small piece of land actually, and it's sandwiched between another bungalow on one side, another bungalow on the other side, and then with all of these enormous houses around the back of it. And I do believe that it would actually fit in quite well. It would fill a hole, if you like. So I would support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, so I'm going to move to the vote for approval. No, for refusal of the item. So almost said yeah. So for refusal for the item. Okay, all those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? That is refused. Okay. Moving on then. So, call upon the officer. Senior Joyce. Oh, no speakers. Okay. Are we happy to take this as a standard item, councillors? Yeah. Okay, so from the chair, I'll move it. Okay. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Yeah. Unanimous. Okay. Okay, moving on then. Item 15, I call on Richard Timms, Principal Planning Officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this is an application for a self-storage building. I've got the, I'll just get the, so we've got the site location plan. This shows the site and the building in its wider context, and in your urgent update, there's also this plan in there. So here's the site here. It's a 4-storey office building. To the west, 2 3-storey houses opposite, 3-storey care home here, and to the east here it's showing an approved development that was at committee earlier in the year, and that's commenced. It's 2-storey light industrial buildings here, and then you've got the large footprint of the 2-storey hotel to the south. So that's just some context. That's just zooming in on the site plan. So got obviously the proposed building here, parking and access to the building to the front. The access to the site is via the EV charging facility to the west, and then obviously room for landscaping as well. And you can see roughly here the building line follows Eclipse House, the 4-storey offices to the west. Just quickly the elevations, because they are on the papers. So the top left is the north, so that's the sort of front, but it is angled there away, so it's not all flat elevation there. The east side, so that's the side facing towards Marks and Spencer's. The west side, that's facing the EV charging facility, so that will be visible. And then the back of the building, bottom right. And then just a few photos. So this is the site is roughly in line with this speed bump, so roughly along here, and then in this area, it's probably about 1 metre below the road level. Up here, you've got the offices behind and the houses to the right. This is just moved slightly on, so the site's in here. It goes slightly further to the left. See the charging facility, and then the last one is just looking back the other way. So there's the access would be down here, and the site's in here. And you can see the care home, M&S, and the offices in the distance. So, and that's just a generalised image from the applicant. So as set out in the report, a previous 5-storey self-storage building was refused, and that was essentially due to a combination of its size, the lack of any articulation to break up its mass, and the use and extent of what we consider to be poorer quality materials. So the primary consideration now is whether that reason for refusal has been overcome. Although that was under delegated powers, that's the decision of the local planning authority. So there's a comparison of the refused and the proposed buildings on page 33 of your papers. And it's our view that the latest scheme has overcome the previous reasons for refusal, and so permission is recommended. Just lastly, we've received one neighbour representation since the agenda was published, but it doesn't raise any new issues that aren't raised in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmins. Okay. Councillor Rothfield.
Thank you, Chair. Sticking as the officer presenting indicated to the grounds, as one of the ward councillors, I would urge the committee to refuse on the grounds that this remains too large a development right on the fringe of the Eclipse Park setting, where it meets residential properties that are also recently built. I can see and I do understand that the applicant has made some efforts in terms of the quality of building materials and the relief of the building itself. However, we are looking, as you can see from the image on screens now, at a very large building which is incongruous with its surroundings. It's very different to the remaining buildings that are used for commercial purposes on the site. It's visible from parts of the area of outstanding natural beauty further up the downs, as well as being directly opposite people's homes. The report mentions residential amenity. It seems to me to be somewhat subjective. I understand that there are issues around sunlight and angles of sunlight, etc. However, in terms of the impact for the residents and their amenity, you are looking at a very large, bland building directly opposite your home. There are plenty of sites in the borough where this type of building would be entirely appropriate. We have a number of industrial estates where it wouldn't be out of character, and it's in keeping with the use of those sites. There is also, as I understand it, a remaining plot on the Eclipse site, and I would urge the committee to consider the impact should we approve something of this scale and nature on what is likely to come forward for remaining plots. And I believe that there's a very real risk that we end up with a rather mishmashed situation at Eclipse Park where overall it lacks coherence. I do have sympathy for the applicant's position that it is difficult to find people that want to build new office buildings. I don't think it's for consideration tonight, but as one of the ward councillors, I would be open to discussions about what we could do to assist. But I'm concerned that we would be using the planning committee and an application-led approach rather than a more measured approach involving local representation to change what we're doing with this particular site. So on those grounds, I would urge that the committee reject the recommendations of officers and refuse the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Okay, Mr. Hawkins for the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague, Jonathan Buckwell, who's unable to attend this evening. So I'll keep this relatively short. I appreciate you've been here for a while this evening. This is an application proposal to provide an appropriate employment generating development on what is the final undeveloped plot within Eclipse Park. The proposal before you is for a modern and secure self-storage facility operated by Cinch Self-Storage, who are a well-established and respected company with around 65 existing locations, which includes facilities in nearby Gillingham and Sittingbourne. The self-storage facility will provide individual secure units of various sizes that residents and businesses can rent to store their belongings. These facilities offer a safe, clean and accessible solution for those needing extra space. One of the key advantages of this proposal is its low impact on the surrounding area, particularly important given the nearby residential uses. Self-storage facilities are generally visited only occasionally by customers, so very little traffic generation and generate little noise in terms of their amenity. Self-storage units provide an invaluable service to the community, and this facility will cater to a wide range of needs, from residents who are downsizing their homes or in the process of moving to those renovating their properties. Local businesses would also benefit having a secure place to store goods or documents. The previous application for the same type of development on this site was found to be acceptable in principle, but was refused on design grounds. We have worked closely with officers to significantly improve the design, directly addressing the previous grounds for refusal. So to conclude, this is a low impact use which will provide employment and benefit the wider community. The site is allocated for employment uses, and this is one of the most compatible employment uses in terms of limited impacts on neighbours. I would therefore urge you to support this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Before being Councillor Cleaver, I just want to check. Mark, is this your ward? Okay, I'll bring the ward councillor in first. Thank you. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as ward councillor, we have been looking at this development along with everything else that goes on in the ward there, but I feel it's going to have go the same way as the IKEA did in the other part of the ward, because even though I feel that we do need to get something in on this development, and I see that there is in the opening statement here evidence to demonstrate that the prospect of office development isn't coming. I do feel that we could have used this land in a bit more of a community-based development, maybe something like a doctor's to go in alongside the care home, maybe something that could have been used a bit more constructively in the area, because with a self-storage unit, I see that there's going to be a lot of traffic income in and out. We're going to have a lot of movement of different equipment in and out of what is already quite a tiny and gridlocked site, on top of the other development that is already going in there. On top of the fact that it's sitting on top of the Junction 7, I would say development, but we all know where that's going. So I appreciate that there have been redesigns to bring this up to form. I also appreciate the gentleman's statement that there will be jobs brought into the site, which has been a case that has been raised a number of times. But I still think that both the residents and the local parish have raised very accurate points in both sections 5.1 and 5.2 on the matter. So as much as I appreciate that we have to look at this on the planning side of things, and naturally we have to look at the pros and cons on this, I can see that there has been a lot of statements made in regards to the local feel of the things. So yes, I do believe that looking at it, we do have examples of this down in the town where something similar has been built on a much larger scale. So there is argument that this is something similar on a smaller scale. So I just feel that we just have to look at this on an open mind, and at the end of the day take into account both sides of the case and that. But ultimately, I think the main impact here is going to be on the surrounding traffic, and I think that is going to be the main clause of discussion here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nagy. Just on the traffic point, over the weekend I dropped my kids off at the cinema. I chose to stay and actually parked up and watched the storage centre down in the town. I was there for like an hour and 40 minutes. 2 cars came to visit it, so I understand the traffic kind of issues, but I don't think there is going to be those kind of traffic issues. So I was just highlighting that kind of point, and that was at midday kind of time. Okay, Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I actually use that storage facility in town, and I can tell you when people are there and it's out of hours. I know, because I've used mine out of hours, put the stuff in, and the noise actually is quite bad, you know, when the gates go up and that. I would also challenge the employment thing. You're going to get 2, maybe 3 people employed there. And I know we've had it before with the Aldi application. They're going to be high quality jobs. They are what they are. I live in the adjoining area, Pennington Heath, so Councillor Harwood's my councillor, and I've given up going to Eclipse Park, trying to get on that site and get off that site. It's always really bad. But my main objection is, I think, is the design of this is too big and in the wrong place. There are plenty of other sites, including other sites we own as well, elsewhere, that this could be located and be, if you like, amongst brownfield sites. This site here, they're going to be by, so you come off the little roundabout, you go down, where the Teslas are all being charged, turn left in there. It's opposite houses. If I'd have paid or been paying in that Cavell care home now, I'd be wondering why I was paying all this money. Because at the moment, you've got a care home, you've got residential, and then you're just going to have total obliterated with this, a drive-through Costa Coffee, which is what I believe we approved last time, and then all the traffic that is trying to get in and out of. But my main objection on this, I think it's too big. The design's not great, and I do think it will have a substantial impact on local residents. For me, if I move my stuff there, if it was built, it'd be a lot more convenient. But that isn't about me and my convenience. It's about the impact, and also the view of the Downs up there now. It's what with the M20. And I remember when the Arida was built, when it was the Stackers Hotel, there was a reason why they had to put it down really low. And it was because of planning objections with the height. Now, I think there'll be a lot of out-of-hours people using it. I've seen the people who use the storage facility where I have stuff stored, and they're mainly market traders. They're people going in and out of hours, you know, gone and done their job, done what they've done, and then they're putting all the stuff back. So, but my main objection is I still think this is too big. in an area that's having an impact, but I'm sure others can say it a lot more eloquently than me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clear. Just you brought the Costa Coffee. In between the Costa Coffee and this, there are 2 industrial units being built of quite a wide, and yeah, and I'm just saying so that it's for consideration about when we look at the setting. Okay, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. This one to me is, it doesn't pass the logic test. I'm looking at the first sentence, the conclusion, where it says, self-storage is not in the local plan. Offices are, but offices are not required. And after that, we make this quantum leap in the logic test into going, well, therefore self-storage is okay. I don't get it. It's not logical. Councillor Cleeter's right. This area is defined by homes. It's a care home. If I was paying for that care home in my final days, I wouldn't want to be looking out at that industrial hulk. I agree. The employment's low. It's in the title. It's self-service. Right, you're not going to have a lot of people. So again, I pass the logic test. It's overbearing. On the traffic point, there's a reason that road you'll only count your 7 cars is because those speed bumps are vicious. You know, I stick to speed limits. You go over that 5 miles an hour and your car still shudders. They're there to deter traffic. We're trying to put something in that's going to increase it. So I don't get it on a logical basis from any angle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cox. Claudine.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose I want to listen to more people, but I suppose here is where I am with it. So the whole site was primarily offices, but as I understand it, that ship has sailed because there's loads of other things on that site. Highways haven't raised any objections, so we can't uphold any objections on highways grounds. I hear absolutely all of the residents are saying, and I think particularly I can see the design improvement from the first one to the second one. But my thought process is presumably somebody could put a planning application in for a big office that's exactly the same size as this, with people going to and from work twice a day, and that would completely comply and would have to be okay. So I'm thinking, I can see the previous refusal was due to its footprint, height, lack of articulation and consequent massing. I guess my question is, do we think that this is still the same reasons as that, or do we think we've come far enough on the design front? Because I can't see we can uphold it just on the fact we wish it was a GP's, there's speed bumps, it's a slightly narrow road, because for me, and it's not an office, because for me all of those ships have sailed.
Okay, thank you. I think as well in the office, I think we've got it down to the locate site as well, where they're trying to get that condition taken off as well. There has been an assessment done that there isn't the uptake for offices at the moment. I'll just quickly bring Richard Timms back in because he just wants to probably correct me on a point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so on the use, the site falls within an employment designation, which, as we say, says primarily for offices. But within that policy, it kind of has a get out, for want of a better word, that if there's no reasonable prospect of an office use coming forward, it can allow other uses. Hence why we've got a care home, we've got Marks and Spencer's, Costa Coffee, and we've got light industrial uses next door. So I think it was correct to say that sort of ship has sailed. The policy can allow a different use. We don't get to then say whether that use is what we want or not. It doesn't sort of specify what that has to be, but nonetheless, it is, albeit very small, employment use. So I think, yeah, the use argument, the policy can allow for it. So I would advise not going down that route. Just some of the other points, traffic, the evidence, which is taken from other such uses and accepted by the Highways Authority is 12 movements. That's 1 in, 1 out. It's 2 movements in the AM peak, so an hour. It's 1 movement every 5 minutes, 1 movement every 3 minutes in the PM, and 18 an hour over a 12-hour period. So it, according to the evidence, it generates low traffic numbers. Impact on residents, yeah, we've carefully considered that. We think the distance away is such that it wouldn't be overbearing. Carried out the light test and it passes the light test. So obviously the decision before was focused on the design, and my advice is if you have concerns, that's what you should be focusing on and not additional grounds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Timms. Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the first public meeting I ever attended as a councillor was on this wider site with I remember with Andrew Rowe when he was the MP for the area. And for many years, for 20 odd years, we fought off all development on this parcel of land. And there was the ancient woodland in the corner opposite the Chiltern Hundreds, and the rest of the field was fruit farming, mostly loganberries. And when finally Maidstone Council allocated the site for development with a strong push from the inspector in the 2000 local plan, it was for high-tech, high-wage employment. And that we pretty much stuck to that, I think, until Next sold the pass. And then the local plan review essentially stripped away most of the employment requirement on it. And I almost question what the officers are saying, because my reading of the policy on that site is it's pretty much do as you want on the site. And that changed in the local plan review. And we were told that when the Costa Coffee application came in, that the reason why we couldn't object to that, and some very similar size sheds, frankly, immediately next door, was because of that change in the local plan review. And I looked at local plan review this afternoon, and I can't see any zoning on it stipulating office or anything else. So policy wise, I think we're in a bit, up a creek without a certain paddle. So I think there's a bit of a challenge there. I think in terms of impacts, as Councillor Cleater has said, it's the size, the height of the thing, which I think is a real challenge. I don't really think it's the use. I would much rather it were this use, if I were a nearby resident, than retail, because look at the trip generation and look at the noise and the gas cylinders that people are using at night and all the problems we get in this area. So I don't think it's the use. I think it is literally a massing issue, and the fact that it's so high. This is a very free draining area. We know that because it's on Fuller's Earth and on the light sand. And we know there's quite a substantial drop. You describe a metre from the road drop, kind of heading kind of east from the kind of southeast from the road. Is there any scope at all to do anything about the height of the building at all? Because actually the landscape, for those who know this part of Old City Moor Road, the landscaping scheme where the lime trees are, opposite when you come from the Chiltern Hundreds, are now a really good screen and look really good, and you can hardly see those big blocks. And the same landscape architects have kind of come in and for all of these new applications and scheme. And I think in time, it will be screened quite well by the lime trees. However, it's still going to be big. So anything at all on the height, which I think is the reason why the massing is so great. And it hasn't. You talked about articulations and so on, so you can see what they've done, but it's still a big warehouse shed. So I'd just be really keen to hear what the officers think on the design front, because as has been pointed out, this is in the foreground of the national landscape, and it is opposite a terrace of houses. So I think we really need to consider this properly.
Yeah, I think that actually is covered in the report, and hence the reason why it has been moved back and actually down to that lower end of the site, Councillor Harwood, to go with it. I will bring Mr. Jarman in.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I think only valid ground would be sort of over dominant, overpowering, overwhelming, over something else, because of the mass of the proposed building and its proximity to existing residences. So if members are concerned about that, I'd advocate that the application is deferred until we get a cross section. So as the chairman pointed out, so we know exactly what the drop in land levels is. We can't tell from that. The distance, and we will try and work with the agents to see if there is the opportunity for dropping it lower. There might not be, but we'll explore that. We'll also explore whether or not the landscaping can be made sort of denser. And it's common, although it hasn't happened at Junction 8. It's quite common with cladding to get sort of gradation of cladding. So you have your darkest colours at the bottom and you get lighter and lighter, and that can sort of visually break up the mass of the building. Thanks.
Okay, so we've got deferral. I'm going to propose a deferral. If there's any items that we want, obviously, Josh to take away to discuss with the applicant, can we again? So I know you were just talking about Councillor Cox has been waiting very patiently. Councillor Harwood.
I'm not known for my patience either. Yeah, so just on that theme, I'm thinking about the Kent Downs National Landscape. One of the things that's where I live, and we're seeing more and more as a light aurora. So that, I'm really worried that dark skies are being eroded because there's a constant glow from this one or that one. And so I would ask two other things if we're deferring this, is that we do look at the light aurora. And I think part of that is also looking at hours of operation. It says here that it's seen that the frequency of visitors outside of normal sleeping hours will be low. Well, let's limit it then. If there's no demand, why are we putting ourselves through that? And why then would the lights be on? So I think those two things go hand in hand. Thank you.
I actually asked the officer about the industrial units and the Costa that we already approved, and we didn't actually put that condition onto them. So I think that'd be considered unreasonable seeing. So,
yeah, so I didn't know you were referring to those uses. There are hours of use restrictions on the industrial units and the Costa. The applicant has proposed 24-hour. If the concern is potential lighting during that, we were recommending a condition, but we can look at the lightings. We can discuss the lighting with them, but they are proposing 24 hours. Are you asking us to, because you have a concern over what, as to why 24 hours?
Okay, 24 hours because you've got a care home opposite, and that means you've got people with irregular sleep patterns who don't, they will value it being nighttime and it appearing to be nighttime, and the same with the residents there. So I think the hours limitation is a good one because the local residents. I think it also has a knock-on effect because there'll be less light movement, and I'd like the light reduction in any case on the building. Thank you.
So it's to do with the lighting.
It's to do with disturbance to the people in the care home. This is hours we're talking about, hours of operation, right? The more people you have coming and going at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's going to disturb either the local residents or the people in the care home. I think it's right that we don't do that.
It says noise and light.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, all I wanted to do is to add to one of the things we'll look at during the deferral period is if you're looking at sections, can you look at the impact of those sections on the views northward into the Kent Downs, to the national landscape? Because we were really careful in designing the Eclipse Park to allow the views through to the Scarp, and this is a bigger building than the others. So therefore we need to understand that, because that section of City Mall Road is a major through route, and I think that's important. And the other issue in relation to the lighting, there's the disturbance to residents, various residents, but there's also it's sandwiched between two ancient woodlands, Heathwood and Upper and Lower Fullimpits Wood. So again, there's an ecological angle as well around. It looks like that's an opaque, lit up frontage, and that is going to be remarkably intrusive in terms of light spillage for the downs, the light spillage for the ancient woodland, and for residents. Frankly, the whole thing should be light green or grey or something like the other units on the site to make it blend in, not opaque glass lit up.
Okay. I think that's something they can discuss with the applicant to go with it, as well to go with it. And obviously I invite the applicant and the things to talk to the ward councillors at the same time as well to go with it. Okay. Any other? No? Councillor Thompson.
Oh, Councillor Cleaser had a hand up. Okay, good. Indeed, it's good to hear that I'm getting the hang of this. Many people have said the things that I had put down. The speed bumps were mentioned. I see there is one space for a goods vehicle in this car park. So, as Councillor Cox points out, there is the prospect of a 3.5 ton truck rolling along Sittingbourne Road at 2 o'clock in the morning and pulling its roller shutters up. There aren't any on the building, but there will be on the truck. Absolutely, we need to be clear about limiting night access. There should not be night access. It's outside bedroom windows of the people, of the families living at the top of the graphic that's on the screen now. So that's absolutely not appropriate. Is it possible to, so it's outside the red line and it's on the highway, do we have any influence over the speed bump issue? So if that is not the case, then the noise implications of goods vehicles, it says there's not HGV access, but it does say that there's a goods bay. So it is angling at that kind of access, and inevitably so. I think that's quite reasonable. Councillor Harwood talked about the views. I would like to know what it actually looks like if I'm at the entrance of the care home, or if I'm inside the care home looking that direction, and what it looks like from the hotel looking north, which I think is points that have been made already, so that we really understand what the footprint is in the overall landscape. I think those things are important. I regret that there are only 4 full-time equivalent jobs. It does seem to be a paltry return, but on the other hand, we've constantly heard in this room of complaints.
Okay, Councillor, so because we are going to defer it, so I ask you to wrap up, please.
About the traffic impact. If this is a low traffic impact, that is surely a benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Summerskill.
Well, I think you were covering with the looking of the height, the point I was going to ask, which is the building to the east. Was that 3-storey, and this is 5-storey? The approved building to the east, which is going to be
it's 2-storey.
So there is a big height difference between that approved building and this one.
You can just see it on the left there.
Is that what's on the left of that? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, just with the views as well. Obviously, we can ask the applicant to produce some views. We can't ask for a view from every window in every house adjacent to it. So I'm sure the applicant would do a cross section and a few views from the North Downs and back up towards it to go with it. Yeah, towards the Downs and one from it, and the cross section to go with it, and the lighting issues to be looked at, and possibly an opaque or more pastel kind of colour to go with the rather than the white. Okay, is that agreed? Okay. Apparently there is some tea and coffee next door. So do people want to take a break, or do you want to continue? You've got to go anyway. So take a break. All right. Oh, sorry. We're deferring, aren't we? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Councillor Jeffries, just come back quickly. Sorry, I just agreed it, but we do need to vote on the deferral. So, all in favour? Deferral. We need to vote on the deferral. No. Okay. Those against? Okay. All right. Okay. And we are going to take a 10-minute adjournment. So, okay. Right, councillors, can you take your seats, please? Okay, councillors. Right, moving on then. We are on item 17. Okay, this item's a starred item. Anyone want this introduced? No? Okay. Then. Oh, Councillor Jeffries is there. Yes, so we're on item 17. Okay. No. The starred item, first of all. Councillor Jeffries has left the meeting.
Okay.
So he's got a conference call. Okay, so in that case, I'm going to propose it from the chair. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Harwood. All in favour? Okay, those against? Those abstaining? So, okay, that is approved. Thank you. Okay. Next item, also a starred item. Anyone wish to discuss it? No? Okay, in that case, I'll propose it from the chair. 18. Okay, so I take it you seconded that, Tony, did you? Okay, all in favour? Chris, you happy not to wave your right? Delighted, I thought you might be. Okay, so we had, sorry, can we just say that again? Because I don't think Debbie called it all. So, all in favour? Okay, those against? Those abstaining? Oh, you're not here. Okay. Oh, you know the applicant. Okay, fair enough. Okay, that is approved. All right. Right, Vintage Park. Chimney. So I move to the officer to introduce. Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Chair. My apology, just a minute. Technical issues. Thank you for waiting. So this application relates to the admin offices within the Vinces Park crematorium site. Which you can see on the screen now. The offices are so the offices are here. The site is covered by blanket TPO and the building is not listed and no other constraints apply. Here is the photograph I've taken from the my site visit. Here is from the front elevation, and here it is rear. So the proposal of this application is for removal of a chimney, and the works are to allow for one floor, for the first floor offices to be made of an open plan nature. The application is presented to the committee because the applicant is the council. And following my assessment, the aesthetic appearance of the chimney removal will be clearly visible from the Bearsted Road, but other than that, this will have no adverse effect on the area. Here on the screen are the proposed elevation, existing elevations, and it does show which chimney to be removed. And here is are the proposed elevations front and rear without chimney. So for the reasons as set out in the report, the proposal is considered to be visually acceptable and no other material harm or result. Therefore, recommendation is to grant planning permission. An amendment is proposed to condition 3 for any necessary replacement tiles to match the existing. Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to just.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, having looked through this, I can't see any reason why we can't go ahead with it. There doesn't seem to be anything outstanding. There doesn't seem to be any harm. It's literally just a case of amending the properties from what they used to be as standing residential houses into more office design spaces, and just removing any of that functionality of the previous house. So as far as I can see, I'd just say I'd motion, sorry, that we just go ahead with it with the agreed conditions for 3 and go ahead from there.
Okay, so you're proposing as per the papers. Yep. Do you have a seconder? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know. Okay. Do you wish to reserve your right? No. Straightforward. Let's go to the vote. All in favour? There we go. Unanimous. Okay. As approved. Okay. I don't actually have anyone wishing to speak on this one, do we neither? Are members wanting to speak on this item? Because otherwise, again, we can actually take to the start item. Okay. Okay, from the chair, I'll have to have a seconder. Thank you, Tony. Okay. Second, yeah. All in favour? With the urgent update, sorry. Those against? Those abstaining? Everyone? Yep, approved. Yep. Oh, okay, called upon Mr. Jarman. 1 minute. Okay, sorry. My apologies. Time to go. Again, anyone else? No? Liking this? Okay, so it takes the start item. Okay, so a seconder. Thank you, Dan. And that, all in favour? Yes? Keep your hands up, please, members. Okay. Unanimous. Okay. Okay. Approved. Now move on to you, Bob.
Just on the whole, pretty good in terms of appeal results. If councillors have any specific queries, then please contact me outside of this meeting. But if councillors want to raise any particular themes, then here's your opportunity. Thanks, Stephen.
Councillor Duncan.
You have nobody to blame but me, Mr. Jarman. Thank you for your guidance earlier. If I may trouble folk after all the good work that we've done to speed through the recent items that were not controversial. Following May's election, I was grateful to ward councillors, including Councillor Strabinsky, and I think I had a very short conversation with Councillor Russell about the Gypsy and Traveller situation, and it was put to me by one of their number, I won't mention any names now, that there had historically been gainful conversations with the MP in that particular area, because it was thought appropriate to explore the conversation with national government to assist in policy development on this subject. I'm looking at page 161 of the papers that we have this evening, and paragraph 60 is why I'm bringing this up now. It was put to me that work had been done under the previous administration to try to leverage assistance from national government to support in policy development, including the Gypsy and Traveller DPD and other related matters. I went to a recent meeting where the MP for Faversham and Mid Kent was addressing local residents, and I explained that we'd had this fruitful conversation in the past and thanked members for bringing me up to speed on things, because what they experience in Headcorn and Oldcombe are similar experiences to mine as ward member in Detling and Stockbury. So I put the question to the MP as to whether or not there could be further assistance on this matter. I see that there are similar comments made about this in paragraph 60 on this document. I asked the MP whether or not moves could be made now at this stage of proceedings, given that we're looking forward to being told that the planning powers of groups like this could be changed in the near future. I think we know they are going to be changed in the near future. Is it possible to get extra assistance to assist with my cabinet colleague in developing the DPD arrangements in Maidstone? And I was basically told Maidstone knows what it's doing. It is already making good progress with policy development. The indication that I was left with, I'm trying to put this as gently as I can, was there wasn't any further help that could be provided. I'm puzzled by this, given that the MP has made comments in paragraph 60 that would seem to indicate that there is the potential for a gainful dialogue with national government to assist in the development of the planning assistance, which, as we heard from Councillor Strabinsky earlier, we are looking desperately for ways to resolve the impasse that we find ourselves in lots of ways. Can we ask for assistance? And if so, how do we do it?
Sorry, Councillor, this is the appeals section. I think we've gone a bit off tangent.
That's absolutely fine, Mr. Chair.
If there's something you want to take up with Mr. Jarman afterwards, then please do so. And I also remind you, obviously, that we are coming up to elections, and please, this isn't the place to be doing those kind of discussions as well. We're a policy committee to go with it.
If anything I said was thought to be other than neutral to the issue, I apologise. That was not my intention.
No, I don't believe it was, Councillor Thompson. But I'll just highlight that. Any questions on the appeal?
I was just going to raise a point. Wow, really loudly, apparently. I was just going to raise a point of fact that MPs don't do planning. That is a local remit of whatever side. They can ask them for loads of help, but personally, the further they stay away from planning, generally, the better.
So what I probably would say is that obviously there are some changes going on. I'm sure the planning department will update us of any changes coming out of the new MPPS and the DPDs going forward, and we'll have some updated training when they do come into force.
Yeah, I don't know how useful this is, but quite a number of years ago. I think it was over 10 years ago. I was involved in conversations with government, to put it that way, along with councillors. And it was something like Maidstone Borough has the third highest Gypsy and Traveller population. Is there any way of sort of strengthening constraints in Maidstone? That was before what's called the PPTS came out, which is specific government guidance on the Gypsy and Traveller community and the travelling show persons. But to cut to the chase, all that happened is that the government, and it hasn't changed, made it much more difficult to get planning permission within the Metropolitan Green Belt, but left everything else. That's where it tightened up. I think Councillor Harwood raised this earlier today, and I don't know if this is a pertinent point or not, but as you can tell from our earlier discussion, inspectors do consider site layouts, and I can think of some authorities where they've got almost like design codes, which is encouraged by the government, very much so, which sets out a template for how dense the site should be, where planting should take place, not in a sort of didactic way, but setting out some parameters on how site should be laid out, so you don't get a cramped appearance. Thanks.
Yeah, Claudine.
Sorry, there was just one more thing, having done the planning enforcement thing through the overview and scrutiny, which we've been looking at and speaking to the planning enforcement officers. I know that they come back to time and time again, one thing that would really help, but again, I don't think that's for this committee or for MPs. I don't know who we send it to, maybe an MP route, but they said if there was an actual obligation on registration of land, when you buy land, that you have to put it into the name of the person that's bought it, that could really help with the enforcement side of things. And that came up through that review. I don't know how we progress on that, but I know that would be helpful.
Unrelated to that, and unrelated to appeals, but there's no forum to discuss this apart from planning committee, because I do think policy is a lot different to decision making. But anyway, to cut to the chase, it's very interesting some of what's proposed in the planning and infrastructure bill. Obviously, it's still a bill; it's not an act. But there's a lot of proposals affecting planning committees, decision-making committees. A number of people have been on to me talking about what the government are calling streamlining of planning committees, which I interpret as being planning committees should only look at a certain scale and type of development. So if it's useful, perhaps I could email a sort of summary of headlines from the planning and infrastructure bill.
Yes, please. Okay, on that note, so Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, just lastly, and it's this whole debate around G&T applications. I mean, what we actually are seeing, and I've been quite forensic in looking at this, is that literally every G&T application is coming to this committee, and yet 99% of the other applications are being delegated powers. There is a different kind of planning subjected to a part of our community than there's for another part of our community, and I think that raises a lot of questions. And actually, it's a very ephemeral type of development, because it's not foundations and bricks and mortar and it's going to be there forever. might be a bit of tarmac in the field. So it's a really interesting one in terms of harm and impact on landscape, which is mostly what planning is about. And yet we are seeing, because of the process we've currently got, literally 100% of one community's applications always coming before a committee, and another part of the community getting very few of their applications, including some really big schemes. And I know it's sensitive, but this is truth, and I think it raises some question marks.
Okay. What we do need to do is note the appeals quickly. Okay. And if people want to have a discussion, I'm quite happy for that to happen after the meeting as such to go with it. But if it's items that actually refer to the appeals, no. Okay. So are the appeals noted? Okay. Well, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.